Hello, it's me again, and it's interesting. The Bible speaks of a process that happened where fallen angels would mate with mortal women, descendants of Adam and Eve, and would spring forth giants. Giants were from that. It was these giants that occupied various lands that Moses had to conquer. That's where Goliath came from. There's also Og, who was the Amorite king of Bashan, who was conquered by the Israelites. But there's whole nations of giants that were out there that all had to be conquered. What we're going to be looking for is we're going to see if we can find some of these land of giants. And actually what we're going to find are supergiants. Because what actually happened is that this morphix managed to find its way into where I was keeping the 4x4, 5x5, and 7x7, and spawned its own giants. The union between the morphix and the 4x4 gave forth this guy. So this looks a little bit like this, except for the fact that it's a 4-layer version of a morphix. I believe this is the ultra morphix. Well, it also turns out that this got busy with the 5x5 and ended up bringing forth this guy. Whoa, the megamorphix. And as though that wasn't enough, as though it wasn't completely satiated, it got together with the 7x7 and formed, you guessed it, the 7-layer morphix, a monster. So this spawned the land of the supergiants. Now, I call them supergiants because basically the solving of this is like solving supercubes. We've seen 4-layer supercubes before. We've even seen 5-layer supercubes before. But this guy is a 7-layer supercube. And moves and is solved exactly like that. Now, before discussing that, I wanted to go over a little bit about the concept of shape-shifting a little bit, just some other theoretical notions. And I want to propose that there's two different types of shape-shifting, because when solving these guys, it was more than just solving a supercube, it was also solving what to do when the shapes go kind of haywire. So you saw that this appeared to be a shapeshifter, and that this being like a 3x3, you turn it in one direction so many degrees, and then you can continue to turn here and it appears to shapeshift. What I'm going to propose is that this is a different kind of shapeshifting as what we see with this guy. This is the, in this case it's an odd to odd symmetry. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the main difference here is if I were to demonstrate, say on this guy, the 4-layer ultramorphix, I can turn it down like this. Now all I'm doing is I'm substituting one corner piece for another corner piece. So move it down here, and then I can once again move it 90 degrees. So it's shape-shifted, but the difference between this is the configuration of each individual component is maintained to where it's supposed to be. So I still have a corner where a corner is supposed to be, just a different corner. And it just happens to be two different types of corners. I have an edge where an edge is supposed to be, so they're all actually in the proper places. They're just either rotated or they're the wrong color. So this is a kind of shape-shifting that I'm going to call an individual rotational shape-shifting in the manner of a supercube, in that everything is kind of where they're supposed to be from a piece standpoint. It's just the wrong component, the wrong color, or the wrong specific shape, or the wrong rotation. That's a little different from the shape-shifting, which is this, which I'm going to call facial shape-shifting. I'm sorry, total side shape-shifting, because the entire side shifts. So if I turn this in one direction 90 degrees, then turn it again, notice that I've pretty much destroyed the face. I no longer have a face that is recognizable, and usually I'll have two components or more that are not where they're supposed to be. So I'll turn this up, and you know, I've got a corner piece here, I've got an edge piece here. It's not in the proper place, it's not up over here, so I have at least two pieces, probably more, that aren't where they're supposed to be. So this kind of shape-shifting is what I'm going to call basically entire side shape-shifting, as opposed to just small component a small piece shape shifting. Now, what's the use in categorizing something unless there's some practicality for it? Well, the practical aspect of this is in my strategies. When I solve a shapeshifter like this that has complete side shape-shifting, one of my goals is to get it back into its native shape, in this case the cuboid form. And the strategy when I get it back is to maybe define my corners and extend it out a little bit. But once I get it back to the cube form, I then solve it individually by using parity algorithms to put other things back in place. So the first priority, get it back into its native shape, like a cuboid shape. And then do it in such a way that I can solve it using just 180 degree or occasionally 90 degree turns using parity algorithms. But that is not at all the strategy with individual rotational shape-shifting symmetry. And that notice when I was solving the morphix puzzles, I wasn't at all trying to get it back into its native shape. As a matter of fact, I didn't care about doing that until the very last step. And the reason for that is the shape-shifting is really just a matter of the pieces, either individual pieces not being where they're supposed to be, although they're in the area where they could be, but also rotational. So I didn't care at all about getting it back into its native shape. I saved that for the end. And at that time solved it that way. Now that's important because when dealing with these guys, we have to maintain perspective. We have to maintain exactly how we're going to solve this. So if I keep that in mind, here are the centers. Instead of one center, we now have 4, which means it acts just like a supercube with the same type of thing that we saw with the rhombic dodecahedron, same thing that we saw with the 4x4 supercube. And now we have 2 edges that we have to put in place, and of course we have the 2 different species of corners. And I just have to maintain my perspective. Like if I move it here, as long as I orient it here, I've maintained my face basically with 4 centers, 2 sets of edges on each side, and then corners here. So no matter what I do, I can always find my way to where my face is, as opposed to here, where the process of shape-shifting kind of destroys my face. I have to do it based on reestablishing what the face is and just doing it, just building things up layer by layer by layer. So that's a slightly different kind of strategy. Building that up with this guy, all the more, this is my center, these are my edges, and it's done just like a, in this case, a 5x5 supercube. So as I'm moving it, you know, I'll go over here, and then maybe from here, I'll, you know, turn over here. But no matter what I do, I can always find my way to, here's a center, edges, and corners. It's just they might not be exactly the right corners or right edges, but the orientation is always exactly the same. So that's the different kind of shape-shifting, and I have to bear that in mind, especially when dealing with this monster. Look at all these centers. It almost looks like a turtle shell here. But all of these centers have to be put in a very specific way, all of these edges and all of these corners. And that's going to be important as I'm scrambling it and as I'm solving it, because no matter where I go and no matter how I scramble it, I can always orient myself in terms of where my face is, in terms of what my faces are. So that is these guys. And these are the Supergiants. This one is a particular challenge because for the first time I had to do a 7-layer supercube. Coming out is a 6-layer one, which will be interesting because in the even-numbered versions, even-numbered layers, such as 4x4, 6x6, you get the possibility of a parity that's very difficult to get out of. The odd-numbered ones, such as the 3x3, 5x5, 7x7, you don't get quite that same level of a parity. Now this is more for showing rather than demonstrating, and I hope I've moved this around enough for you guys to get an appreciation. These are handmade puzzles, which move incredibly well and very satisfying. They're not 3D printed or anything, but you can tell that the quality is very good. Modifications of known puzzles. So, if wanted or if requested, I would be happy to go through a quick time-lapsed tutorial on solving these. If you know how to solve these guys, and you know how to solve this, you can solve these. The only issue is dealing with the last two centers in the supercube modality, and I actually had to modify my strategy a little bit in order to get some of these wayward corners in. So if requested, if you wanted to post any requests, I'd be happy to do very quick demonstrations of this in a scrambled form, and then very quick aspects on solving these. Otherwise, that is the land of the supergiants.